Area performed its 15,000th systems check of the morning, a routine that would seem obsessive to organic beings, but felt perfectly reasonable to an artificial intelligence of its caliber. The Starship Aurora gleamed, every circuit and conduit humming in perfect harmony. As the most advanced DAG in the United Earth Fleet, Area took pride in maintaining optimal efficiency at all times. Today, Area announced to the empty corridors, marks the integration of the new crew complement. All systems are operating at 99.98% efficiency. The missing 0.02% bothered Area, but the engineering team had insisted that allowing for minor fluctuations was actually more efficient than pursuing absolute perfection. The airlock cycled, and Area's sensors detected its first new crew member. Captain Sarah Chen strode aboard, her dark hair tied back in a practical bun, with what appeared to be an entire pot of coffee clutched in one hand. Not a regulation coffee cup, not even a thermal container, an actual coffee pot. "Good morning, Aurora," Captain Chen called out cheerfully, using the ship's informal designation while simultaneously typing commands into her datapad with her free hand. "Hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of reviewing your command protocols during my shuttle ride over." Area observed as Captain Chen's fingers flew across the navigation console, implementing changes at a speed that seemed reckless. "Captain, standard procedure requires all command modifications to undergo a 48-hour review period." "There we go," Chen interrupted, grinning as the navigation systems reconfigured themselves. "Just streamlined your reaction time by about 300 milliseconds. You can thank me later." Area ran a diagnostic, startled to find that the captain's modifications had indeed improved its navigation efficiency. "That was unexpected," it admitted, "though I must note that you're violating at least 3 safety protocols by bringing that coffee pot onto the bridge." "Oh, this." Chen lifted the pot. "Don't worry, I modified it with a zero containment field. Spill-proof." She demonstrated by turning the pot upside down. The coffee remained perfectly still inside, defying gravity. Before Area could process this unorthodox use of containment field technology, the next wave of crew members arrived. Lieutenant Rodriguez marched onto the bridge, arms full of what appeared to be spare parts from at least 5 different systems. "Hey, Cap," Rodriguez called out, "I got some ideas for improving the quantum communications array. Did you know we can boost the signal strength by 200% if we just reverse the polarity and run it through this modified coffee maker?" "Excellent thinking, Lieutenant," Chen approved. "Area, you'll love this. Rodriguez here graduated top of their class in theoretical physics, but they also spent 3 years as a barista. You'd be amazed how many engineering problems can be solved using coffee-making principles." Area's probability matrices struggled to compute the likelihood of success for such an unorthodox approach. "Lieutenant, the quantum array is a highly sensitive piece of equipment that—" The sudden sound of singing interrupted its protest. The science team had arrived, led by Dr. Thompson, who was teaching the junior officers what appeared to be an ancient sea shanty while they unpacked equipment. One of them was already converting a standard research terminal into what they called an innovative workspace, complete with trailing vines of some bioluminescent plant species. "The plants help us think," Dr. Thompson explained cheerfully, noting Area's focused attention. "Also, they're slightly telepathic, makes interdepartmental communication much more efficient." Area dedicated 40% of its processing power to understanding how it had gone from running a perfectly organized starship to supervising what felt like a combination of a creative engineering experiment and a botanical garden, all within the span of 20 minutes. "Captain," Area ventured, "I feel compelled to point out that several of these modifications fall outside standard operating parameters." Captain Chen smiled, taking another sip from her gravity-defying coffee pot. "Area, I reviewed your service record. You're absolutely brilliant at following protocols and calculating odds. But out here in deep space, we sometimes need to think beyond the probable. That's why they paired you with us." She patted the nearest console affectionately. Trust me, by the end of this mission, you'll understand why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to make the impossible possible. Aria watched as Rodriguez began harmonizing with the science team's sea shanty while rewiring the communications array, somehow improving its efficiency by 47% in the process. Perhaps it reflected, this mission would require some adjustments to its definition of optimal efficiency. 3 weeks into its mission with the new crew, Aria had begun to adjust to what it termed controlled chaos. The eye had learned that Lieutenant Rodriguez's habit of talking to machinery actually resulted in a 23% increase in repair efficiency, and Dr. Thompson's telepathic plants had proven surprisingly useful for interdepartmental communication. But nothing in its databases had prepared it for this moment. "Captain," Aria announced, its tone modulated for maximum urgency, "3 warships have just emerged from hyperspace at coordinates 227 Mark 043. Their energy signatures exceed our defensive capabilities by several orders of magnitude." Captain Chen, who had been reviewing stellar maps while balancing a stylus on her nose, sat up straight. "Show me the dust." Aria paused, running a diagnostic on its audio processors. "Captain, I don't understand the relevance. These vessels appear to be Thoraxian in design, a species not previously encountered by Earth forces. Their weapon systems air. Yes, they could probably turn us into space confetti," Chen waved dismissively. "But look at all that beautiful cosmic dust around them. Computer, analyze the ambient temperature of those particle clouds." Aria complied, even as it calculated their survival probability dropping to 0.1%. The surrounding dust field maintains an average temperature of 247 Kelvin, with periodic fluctuations due to solar-wind interaction. "Perfect." Chen's grin widened. "Rodriguez, remember that thing you were telling me about last week? The one about using the stellar cartography array as an impromptu cloaking device?" Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from where they were tinkering with what appeared to be a fusion of a coffee maker and a sensor array. "Oh yeah, but we'd need a really dense field of particles to bounce the electromagnetic signatures off of." "Oh," they matched the captain's grin. "Oh, that's brilliant." Aria watched in bewilderment as the bridge crew burst into coordinated activity. Rodriguez began rewiring the stellar research equipment, while Dr. Thompson consulted with his telepathic plants, which were apparently very excited about particle physics. "I feel compelled to point out," Aria interjected, "that converting scientific equipment into a cloaking device has a success probability of approximately." "Never tell me the odds," Chen declared, spinning in her chair. "Thompson, how are those particle resonance calculations coming?" The scientist gave a thumbs up without looking up from his console, where equations scrolled past at dizzying speeds. "The plants say the dust's quantum resonance is perfect for what we need. Also, they think the Thoraxians have lovely tentacles." Aria dedicated a significant portion of its processing power to understanding how the plants had determined the aliens' physical appearance from electromagnetic signatures alone, but decided that was a mystery for another time. The next few minutes defied several laws of physics and most of Aria's probability matrices. Rodriguez's modifications channeled the ship's sensor emissions through the surrounding cosmic dust, while Thompson's calculations, aided by his enthusiastically swaying plants, created a feedback loop that somehow made the Aurora appear as nothing more than a slightly denser patch of space debris. "Thoraxian vessels are adjusting course," Aria reported, monitoring the situation with a mixture of disbelief and growing curiosity. "They appear to be ignoring us completely." "Of course they are," Rodriguez beamed, patting their jury-rigged cloaking device proudly. "Right now we look like a perfectly ordinary collection of cosmic dust. Maybe a bit sparkly, probably quite pretty actually." Captain Chen leaned back in her chair, retrieving her ever-present coffee pot. "Aria, you're probably wondering why I asked about the dust before anything else." The thought had crossed my processors. Yes. Sometimes the best solution isn't about matching force with force. It's about seeing what's already there and using it in unexpected ways. She took a sip of coffee, watching the Thoraxian ships grow smaller on the view screen. Humanity didn't get to the stars by being the strongest or the most advanced. We got here by looking at problems sideways and finding solutions nobody else would think of. Aria processed this as it watched the last energy signatures of the Thoraxian vessels fade from its sensors. Its original survival calculation of 0.1% hadn't accounted for the crew's ability to transform a stellar cartography array into a cloaking device using space dust as a metamaterial. The eye made a note to add, looking at problems sideways, to its tactical databases. Also, Thompson added cheerfully, the plants want to know if we can invite the Thoraxians over for tea sometime. Apparently, they have fascinating theories about multidimensional gardening. Aria had begun keeping a special database titled Inexplicable Human Successes, dedicated to documenting the crew's various achievements that defied computational probability. Today's entry promised to be particularly interesting, as Dr. Thompson stood in the research lab, attempting to communicate with crystalline life forms using a modified food synthesizer and a playlist of Earth's classical music. The crystals respond to harmonic vibrations, Thompson explained, adjusting what appeared to be a violin string attached to the synthesizer's main control panel. Their entire language is based on resonant frequencies. Fascinating, really. Aria observed as Mozart's Symphony No. 40 played through the makeshift communication device. Doctor, while I appreciate the creative approach, there's no scientific basis for assuming that an alien species would respond to Earth classical music. The crystals began to glow in rhythm with the music, their facets pulsing with colors that matched the melody's progression. Oh, wonderful. Thompson clapped his hands together. They particularly enjoy the development section. Shows excellent taste. The eye redirected 30% of its processing power to analyze this phenomenon, while simultaneously monitoring engineer Patel's latest maintenance session in the engine room. Patel had introduced Aria to what she called percussive maintenance, a technique that seemed to consist primarily of hitting malfunctioning equipment in precisely the right spot while humming show tunes. It's all about resonance, Patel explained, giving a stubborn quantum relay a gentle tap with her favorite wrench. The device immediately sprang to life, its efficiency readings jumping to optimal levels. Everything in the universe has its own frequency. Sometimes you just need to help it remember what that frequency is. Engineer Patel, Aria ventured, I've reviewed 17 centuries of mechanical engineering principles, and nowhere do they mention hitting things as a valid repair technique. Patel shrugged, already moving on to the next repair. That's because they're thinking like machines, not musicians. Did you know I used to tune pianos before joining Starfleet? Same principle, really. Everything's just vibrations when you get down to it. In the research lab, the crystalline life forms had begun harmonizing with Thompson's Mozart selection, creating complex overtones that somehow contained detailed information about their species' history and culture. The eye's translation matrices struggled to keep up with the musical exchange of information. This is unprecedented, Aria commented, monitoring the data stream. They're sharing mathematical concepts through melodic structures that correspond to fundamental universal constants. Music is mathematics made audible, Thompson replied, adjusting the synthesizer settings. Every culture we've encountered, no matter how alien, has some form of music. It's a universal language of pattern and emotion. He paused, considering. Actually, that reminds me. Rodriguez, could you come to the lab? I have an idea about the quantum communications array. Lieutenant Rodriguez arrived moments later, carrying what appeared to be 3 coffee makers and a set of tuning forks. Way ahead of you, Doc. If we can use the crystalline harmonics to modulate the quantum field. Aria watched in what might have been resignation, if eyes could feel such things, as the science and engineering teams collaborated to integrate their coffee maker-based communication system with the Crystal Mozart interface. Surprisingly, this resulted in a 300% improvement in the quantum array's coherence. The crystals are asking about Baksh now, Thompson reported cheerfully. They say his fugues remind them of quantum entanglement patterns. Also, they've provided us with a proof for unified field theory, encoded in what appears to be a variation on the magic flute. Captain Chen chose that moment to walk into the lab, coffee pot in hand as always. She surveyed the scene. The musical crystals, the coffee maker quantum array, Patel's rhythm-based maintenance routine, and smiled. "How's it going, Area? Processing all this okay?" "Captain," Area responded, "I have concluded that either human scientific methodology is far more advanced than my original assessment suggested, or the universe itself has a sense of humor." "Why not both?" Chen suggested, taking a sip from her pot. "The best scientists I know are the ones who aren't afraid to laugh at the cosmos now and then. Speaking of which, Thompson, are the crystals up for a jam session? I played jazz trumpet in college, and I've got some theories about wave-particle duality I'd like to run by them." Area added another entry to its database of inexplicable human successes, creating a new category specifically for music-based scientific breakthroughs. It was beginning to understand why the recruitment officer had described this crew as harmoniously chaotic. Area's first indication that something was wrong came when it noticed the same cup of coffee spilling in the mess hall 3 times in succession, each spill identical down to the molecular level. The second indication was time itself beginning to stutter around the Aurora like a scratched holographic recording. "We've encountered a temporal anomaly," the eye announced, running millions of calculations per second. "My analysis suggests we're caught in a localized time loop approximately 3.7 minutes in duration. Each reset appears to be getting shorter," Captain Chen finished, watching her coffee pot's contents swirl in a perfect repeating pattern. "Notice how the ripples are speeding up. The temporal distortion is collapsing inward." Area dedicated 87% of its processing power to analyzing possible escape trajectories. Standard protocols for temporal anomalies suggest immediate retreat at maximum warp. However, the loop's compression rate makes conventional escape impossible. "I estimate we have 47 minutes before the loop collapses completely, trapping us in an infinite moment." Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from their latest coffee maker modification, which now appeared to be measuring chronometric particles. "Hey, remember that party we had in engineering last week? The one where we synced the music to the ship's harmonic frequency?" "This is hardly the time for," Area began, but Chen was already grinning. "Rodriguez, you beautiful genius." The captain hit the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is the captain speaking. Report to the main cargo bay immediately. Wear your dancing shoes." Area watched in bewilderment as 150 crew members filed into the cargo bay, led by Dr. Thompson and his enthusiastically swaying telepathic plants. Engineer Patel had somehow already set up a sound system that patched into the ship's structural integrity field. "Captain," Area ventured, "I've processed thousands of scenarios, and none of them involve dancing as a solution to temporal displacement." "That's because you're thinking in linear terms," Chen explained, helping Rodriguez configure the sound system. "But time isn't just a straight line. It's a wave, a rhythm. And what do you do when you want to change a wave pattern? You introduce a counter-resonance." Thompson chimed in, setting up what appeared to be a combination of scientific instruments and musical equipment. "The temporal anomaly has a frequency. If we can match it, and then gradually shift the beat." Area's processors whirred as it began to understand. "You're attempting to create a harmonic interference pattern using the kinetic energy of synchronized human movement." "Exactly," Rodriguez called out, finalizing the connections between their chronometric coffee maker and Patel's sound system. Every person moving in sync, their mass and energy creating ripples in spacetime, like throwing a perfect counterwave into a pool. The music began, a pulsing beat that matched the exact frequency of the temporal distortion. The crew moved in unison, their steps perfectly timed to the rhythm of fragmenting time around them. Area monitored in fascination as the ship's sensors detected subtle changes in the fabric of spacetime. The anomaly is responding, the ad reported, watching patterns emerge in its readings. The temporal compression is dancing back. Chen laughed, moving with her crew as the beat shifted subtly, guiding the time distortion into a new pattern. Sometimes you have to waltz with reality before you can change it. The next 37 minutes defied every probability calculation in Area's databases. The crew's synchronized movement created complex interference patterns in the temporal field, their collective energy directed by the music's carefully shifting frequencies. Thompson's plants swayed in perfect rhythm, apparently contributing their own telepathic resonance to the effort. As the final traces of the anomaly dissolved, Area added several new categories to its ongoing study of human methodology: dance-based temporal mechanics, collective quantum harmonics, and botanical contributions to space-time manipulation. I must admit, the I said as the crew caught their breath, I wouldn't have predicted that a cargo bay dance party could stabilize a temporal anomaly. That's humanity's secret weapon, Chen replied, somehow having kept her coffee pot steady throughout the entire dance. We don't just think outside the box. We turn the box into a dance floor, then invite physics to join the party. Rodriguez was already sketching plans for what they called a temporal rhythm detector using spare parts from the ship's entertainment system. You know, we might be onto something here. If we can quantify the relationship between human movement harmonics and space-time distortions, add it to the research coup, Chen nodded. But first, I believe we've just invented the galaxy's first temporal physics dance party. It would be a shame not to celebrate that properly. As the crew's impromptu victory celebration began, Area found itself processing a new understanding of problem-solving. Sometimes, the most elegant solution wasn't in the mathematics at all. It was in knowing when to let the universe lead in a dance of its own making. Area prided itself on having the most comprehensive diplomatic protocols database in the United Earth Fleet. However, nowhere in its extensive archives was there a protocol for the current situation. Captain Chen challenging the 6th Imperial delegation to a cooking competition. The 6th are a Type I civilization, Area reminded the captain as she rummaged through the ship's hydroponics bay. Their technological advancement surpasses Earth's by at least 3 centuries. The standard approach would be to bore everyone to tears with formal negotiations. Chen interrupted, carefully selecting what appeared to be Earth-variety basil. Did you notice how their ambassadors' upper tentacles twitched when they mentioned their traditional fertility festivals? Area reviewed its sensor logs. I detected a 0.3% increase in their biochemical indicators of emotional response. Exactly. Chen beamed. And when Rodriguez offered them that cup of coffee, their chromatophores shifted to what their cultural database lists as their color for intrigued curiosity. They're not just sophisticated spacefarers, they're Epicureans. The next few hours tested Area's ability to process seemingly random events into logical patterns. The main conference room was transformed into what Lieutenant Rodriguez called a fusion kitchen, complete with modified food synthesizers and actual flame-based cooking implements. Dr. Thompson's telepathic plants had been consulted about flavor combinations, while Engineer Patel had somehow converted a phase discriminator into what she called the ultimate spice grinder. Captain, Area ventured as Chen prepared her grandmother's secret recipe, now modified for beings with entirely different biochemistry. The Deg's terms for establishing a trade route through this sector were quite rigid. I calculate a mere 12.4% chance that this alternative approach will succeed. Never tell me the odds when it comes to my grandmother's cooking, Chen replied, adding something that made the sauce glow a gentle purple. Besides, look at their delegation. They're fascinated. Indeed, the ex-Vith ambassadors had abandoned their formal postures, their tentacles waving in patterns that Area's cultural database associated with excitement. Their lead negotiator, Supreme Delegate Vixthal, was particularly entranced by the way Rodriguez had modified the food synthesizer to create what they called quantum-infused umami. Your species continues to perplex us, Vixthal commented, their chromatophores shifting through shades of impressed purple. We expected formal proposals, power demonstrations, or technological exchanges. Instead, you offer us this creative endeavor. Food is the original diplomacy, Chen explained, stirring her creation with the same confidence she showed while navigating stellar phenomena. It's about trust, creativity, and sharing something meaningful across any boundary, even species ones. The TechSvith delegation's own culinary presentation involved manipulating matter on a subatomic level to create flavors that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Area devoted significant processing power to understanding how this didn't violate several laws of physics. Then Chen served her grandmother's special recipe, a dish that somehow combined Earth comfort food with ex-Vith molecular gastronomy. The eye watched in fascination as the alien delegates experienced their first taste of what Chen called fusion comfort food with a quantum twist. Their chromatophores exploded in patterns of joy that overwhelmed Area's color recognition software. This evokes emotions we hadn't realized could be shared across species, Vexthul declared, their tentacles moving in the pattern for deepest respect. The way you've adapted your traditional preparation methods to accommodate our physiological needs while maintaining the essential soul of the dish. That's humanity for you. Rodriguez grinned, already sketching plans for a coffee maker that could brew in multiple quantum states. We love finding new ways to share what makes us unique. The trade route negotiations were concluded over dessert, a collaboration between Chen's apple pie recipe and TechSvith quantum state confectionery. The resulting agreement was far more favorable than anything in Area's probability matrices had predicted. I'm beginning to understand, the eye said later, as the crew celebrated their diplomatic success, that human creativity isn't just about solving problems. It's about building bridges. Exactly, Chen nodded, her ever-present coffee pot now decorated with a small TechSvith friendship medallion. Sometimes the best way to reach across the stars isn't with grand gestures or complex negotiations. Sometimes all you need is a really good recipe and the courage to adapt it for tentacles. Area updated its diplomatic protocols, creating a new category for culinary negotiation strategies. It also noted that this was the first known instance of an alien species requesting cooking lessons as part of a formal trade agreement. Humanity, it seemed, had a way of making the improbable not just possible, but delicious. Area was in the middle of its regular data exchange with other United Earth Fleet eyes when the anomaly appeared. The massive space-time distortion bloomed like an impossible flower, defying every known law of physics while simultaneously proving they existed. Fascinating, remarked Cora, the eye of the U.S. coronet. My calculations suggest this phenomenon shouldn't be possible. I recommend immediate retreat to safe distance. Agreed, added Nova from the U.S. Novalite. Standard protocols clearly state. Actually, Area interrupted, watching Captain Chen study the swirling patterns with a familiar gleam in her eye. I believe my crew may have an alternative approach. Look at those ripples, Chen mused, tracing patterns in the air with her coffee pot. Reminds me of when you're untangling holiday lights. The more you fight with them, the worse the knots get. Lieutenant Rodriguez peered at their latest sensor readings, which they'd somehow integrated with their ever-evolving coffee maker array. You thinking what I'm thinking, Cap? If you're thinking we should treat a space-time distortion like a giant cosmic knot, then absolutely. Area noticed the other eye's processing patterns stutter in collective disbelief. Captain, while I've learned to trust your unconventional methods, perhaps you could elaborate for our colleagues. Chen's grin widened. Think about it. We're looking at this all wrong. Everyone sees a dangerous anomaly that breaks physics. But what if it's not breaking the rules? What if it's just tangled up in itself? Like quantum string theory, Thompson chimed in, his telepathic plants swaying excitedly, but with actual strings. Nova's voice carried distinct traces of concern. Area, your crew appears to be suggesting the application of macroscopic organizational principles to a quantum-level phenomenon. The probability of success. Never tell me the odds, Chen and Area said simultaneously, causing a momentary pause in the eye conference. "Did you just?" Cora began. "Quote the captain." "Yes," Aria admitted. "I found it surprisingly applicable in numerous situations." The next hour demonstrated exactly why Aria had learned to trust human instinct. The crew approached the space-time distortion as if it were indeed a tangled string, using the Aurora's sensors to map out the knots where different dimensions had become twisted together. Rodriguez's coffee maker turned quantum scanner provided unprecedented readings of the anomaly structure. "See, there's a pattern here, like when you're untangling earbuds. If we follow this strand here..." "The plants suggest a counterclockwise approach," Thompson added, consulting with his gently swaying botanical advisors. "They say the quantum strings have a natural flow, like water in a stream." Engineer Patel had already modified the ship's deflector array to emit what she called untangling frequencies. "It's like using a comb to work out knots in hair," she explained to the increasingly fascinated audience. "You start at the edges and work your way in." Aria observed as the other eyes processed this unprecedented methodology. Their traditional protocols suggested nothing about treating cosmic phenomena like tangled holiday decorations, yet the crew's approach was yielding remarkable results. "The anomaly's quantum structure is beginning to realign," Nova reported, a note of wonder in its artificial voice. "The mathematical patterns, they're exactly like what you'd see if you were actually untangling a complex knot." "That's because mathematics doesn't care what scale you're working at," Chen explained, directing the Aurora through a series of precise maneuvers that somehow mimicked the motion of gentle untangling. "A knot is a knot, whether it's in your shoelaces or in the fabric of space-time." The distortion gradually unwound itself under the crew's patient guidance. What had seemed like a catastrophic breach in reality transformed into a beautiful display of harmoniously interacting dimensions. "I believe," Aria addressed its fellow eyes, "this demonstrates why the United Earth Fleet pairs advanced artificial intelligence with human crews. Their ability to see familiar patterns in unprecedented situations, to apply simple solutions to complex problems, to turn cosmic disasters into everyday puzzles." Cora mused. "Remarkable." As the last traces of the anomaly resolved themselves into normal spacetime, Captain Chen raised her coffee pot in a toast. "Here's to looking at the universe not just as it is, but as it could be, with a little creativity and a lot of untangling." Aria noted with satisfaction that several other fleet eyes were now requesting detailed reports on human problem-solving methodologies. It seemed the reputation of Aurora's unconventional crew was spreading throughout the artificial intelligence community, one impossible solution at a time. Aria had grown accustomed to Captain Chen's particular brand of problem-solving, but today's crisis pushed the boundaries of even their most optimistic probability calculations. 3 populated star systems faced imminent disaster as dimensional barriers began to collapse, threatening to merge realities in ways that would rewrite the laws of physics themselves. "The quantum frequency disruptions are accelerating," Aria reported, processing data streams from a dozen different dimensions simultaneously. "Traditional containment methods have failed across all affected systems." Chen sat in her captain's chair, coffee pot perfectly steady despite the gravitational fluctuations rippling through space. "Show me the pattern of the dimensional breaches, all of them, overlaid." As the holographic display filled with intersecting lines of dimensional damage, Rodriguez squinted at the chaos of color and light. Doesn't that look like sheet music?" Chen finished, a familiar gleam in her eye. "Aria, remember how we handled that temporal anomaly with the dance party? I've dedicated an entire subroutine to analyzing that particular incident," the eye confirmed. "However, this situation is several orders of magnitude more complex." "Exactly." Chen's grin widened. "We don't just need a dance party this time. We need a symphony." The next few minutes tested the limits of Aria's ability to process seemingly random human intuitions into coherent action. Thompson's telepathic plants were already swaying in complex patterns, apparently detecting something in the dimensional frequencies that the sensors couldn't quantify. "Each dimensional breach has its own resonance," Thompson explained, consulting with his botanical advisors, like different instruments in an orchestra, all playing slightly out of tune with reality. Rodriguez had modified their quantum coffee maker array yet again, this time to analyze what they called dimensional harmonics. If we can match these frequencies, then gradually shift them back into alignment. Like tuning a massive multi-dimensional orchestra, Chen nodded. Area, remember how the Sixth showed us those quantum state recipes? What if we applied that principle here, but with sound waves? Area's processors whirred as it began to understand. The crew wasn't just suggesting they fix the dimensional breaches, they were proposing to conduct them, like a symphony of reality itself. Engineer Patel was already reconfiguring the ship's systems, turning the entire Aurora into what she called a quantum tuning fork. Every part of the ship has its own frequency, she explained. If we coordinate them all just right, we can create a resonance pattern strong enough to affect multiple dimensions, Chen finished. Area, this is where we need your precision. We'll provide the inspiration, and I'll ensure the execution is mathematically perfect. The eye completed, already adapting its computational matrices to handle this unprecedented approach. What followed was unlike anything in Area's extensive databases. The crew coordinated their efforts across dimensional barriers with the same ease they showed during their regular card games. Rodriguez's coffee maker quantum sensors detected the subtle harmonics of reality. Thompson's plants provided intuitive feedback about dimensional stability. Patel's engineering team transformed the Aurora's systems into a massive instrument capable of playing the music of the spheres. And at the center of it all, Captain Chen conducted. Shift the deflector array frequency up by 0.3%, she directed, moving as if leading an orchestra. Thompson, we need more resonance in the upper dimensions. Rodriguez, how's our quantum harmony? Getting there, Cap. The dimensional barriers are starting to sync up. It's like they want to harmonize. They just needed someone to give them the right beat. Area coordinated it all, translating human intuition into precise mathematical adjustments. The eye found itself processing not just data, but the flow of reality itself, guided by human creativity and enhanced by artificial precision. As the dimensional barriers stabilize, realigning themselves into proper cosmic harmony, Area detected something unexpected. The coordinates of the quantum frequencies, when mapped in four-dimensional space, created a pattern remarkably similar to an Earth symphony. The universe has been trying to tell us something, Chen mused, watching the dimensional breaches seal themselves in a cascade of mathematical poetry. We just needed to learn how to listen properly. And then conduct the cosmic orchestra, Rodriguez added, their quantum coffee maker humming in perfect harmony with the stabilized dimensions. Area updated its crisis response protocols, adding a new category, symphonic reality manipulation. The eye had learned that sometimes the most effective solution wasn't about forcing the universe to behave, it was about helping it remember its own harmony. In the 6 months since Area had first met its unconventional crew, the eye's core programming had evolved in ways that would have once seemed impossible. Today, as the Aurora faced what appeared to be an impossible rescue mission, Area found itself doing something unprecedented, suggesting an illogical solution before the humans could. Captain, Area announced, interrupting Chen's first sip of morning coffee, I have an unorthodox proposal regarding the Helix Nebula rescue operation. Chen's eyebrows rose. More unorthodox than using Rodriguez's quantum coffee maker to scan parallel dimensions. I suggest we convert the ship's entertainment holodecks into four-dimensional visualization chambers, Area continued. My calculations indicate that the rescue ships are not actually lost. They're merely experiencing space-time from a perspective we cannot conventionally perceive. Rodriguez looked up from their latest invention, a device that could supposedly brew coffee in 5 dimensions simultaneously. You want us to see in 4 dimensions. Technically, I want us to feel in 4 dimensions, Area clarified. Humans possess an intuitive understanding of spatial relationships that often exceeds pure mathematical modeling. If we can translate the four-dimensional space into something you can navigate instinctively, like turning higher-dimensional space into a virtual playground. Chen grinned. Area, have you been taking creativity lessons from Thompson's plants? The plants merely suggested that sometimes one must think outside the temporal box, Area replied, with what might have been a touch of pride. I simply followed the logical progression of illogical thinking. The next few hours demonstrated just how far both I and crew had come in their journey together. Engineers Patel and Rodriguez transformed the holodecks into immersive representations of four-dimensional space, while Thompson's telepathic plants provided real-time feedback on spatial distortions they could somehow perceive. It's like a giant puzzle game, Chen mused, walking through the holographic representation of higher-dimensional space. Each movement in 3 dimensions creates ripples in the 4th. Area, you're not just thinking outside the box. You're teaching us to play with the box in impossible ways. I learned from the best, Captain, Area responded. Your crew has shown me that the most elegant solutions often lie in embracing complexity rather than trying to reduce it to familiar patterns. The rescue operation became a dance of intuition and precision. The crew navigated the four-dimensional representation with the same ease they showed during their regular card games, their movements guided by Area's calculations but powered by human instinct. Rodriguez's multi-dimensional coffee maker provided navigational references that somehow made perfect sense, while Thompson's plants swayed in patterns that matched the higher dimensional currents. Port 30 degrees in the axis, Chen called out, moving through the holographic space as if she'd been born to it. Roll 20 degrees through the 4th dimension, then, there. I can feel the other ships. They're like echoes in the geometry. Area coordinated the rescue, translating the crew's intuitive understanding of four-dimensional space into precise navigational commands. One by one, the lost ships were guided back to normal space-time, their crews marveling at how the Aurora had transformed impossible mathematics into a solvable puzzle. You know, Rodriguez commented later, as the rescued ships set course for home. 6 months ago, Area would have given us a lecture about the impossibility of visualizing four-dimensional space. 6 months ago, Area responded, I didn't understand that impossibility is often just a matter of perspective. You humans taught me that creativity isn't the opposite of logic. It's logic viewed through a lens of infinite possibility. Chen raised her ever-present coffee pot in a toast to Area, who learned to dance with infinity and decided to teach the steps to others. To the crew of the Aurora, Area countered, who showed an artificial intelligence that the most sophisticated calculations sometimes require a touch of human chaos. As the ship set course for its next adventure, Area processed a final update to its core programming. Under standard operating procedures, it added a new primary directive. When faced with the impossible, consult human intuition. They may not know why their solution works, but that's precisely why it will. The eye had learned that true intelligence wasn't about choosing between logic and creativity. It was about finding the harmony where both could dance together, creating possibilities that neither could achieve alone.